Hello everyone, Dash here, DMD of Houston Institute, and welcome back to the Houston Institute Data Video Series. So in the first two videos, we looked at two topics, one, scoring exam data on a free response test, and then breaking down that data by standard to see which standards were doing well, which standards were not doing so well. Now we're going to move on to tracking student growth. This is one of the most important things we as teachers can do with student data to see how much are our students growing or unfortunately deproving sometimes, and what can we do to make sure that we're setting good growth goals for ourselves as well as holding ourselves accountable to those growth goals. Again, my email address is displayed on the screen right here. Reach out with any questions about these videos or data otherwise. Access the data from last time here at this link. I would really recommend that you watch the first two videos before we dive into this video, because this video will be a bit more advanced. It's still beginner level, but it will be a bit more advanced than the previous two. So if you have not seen the previous two videos and you're not very comfortable with Excel or Google Sheets or spreadsheet systems, it'd be a good chance to check those out. Links are in the description for those two videos. So once you've typed in the tiny URL link with Institute Data 3, you'll come to this screen again. Again, we're going to go to File, Make a Copy, so you can get your own editable copy that you can play around with as I work on the screen here. So now that we've broken down one exam pretty completely, we're going to go over to the second tab. Google Sheets has a tab system, and we're going to go to the second tab down here that says Overall. Here are my 20 students again, but instead of just scores from one exam, I have scores from 3 different assessments: a diagnostic assessment, and 2 assessments, assessment 1 and assessment 2. Got very creative with the naming there. In the middle here, I have a quarter goal for each student, where I want them to be at the end of the quarter given their diagnostic score. Now you notice that I have very different goals for each of my students. The way I calculated these was I took their diagnostic score and subtracted it from 100, so how far they were from getting a perfect score, and then I divided that number by 2. Then I added it back to their original score. So they're trying to halve their distance to 100%. That's my growth goal for them. This means that, for example, a student who scored very, very low, say 10% on the initial exam, so they're 90 points away from 100%. Well, my growth goal for them is to grow by half that, grow by 45 points. So their goal should be to go from a 10 to a 55. A student scored very high in the diagnostic, say at 90%, they should only have to grow by 5 points. They're having their way to 100. This takes into account that students who do score low on a diagnostic have a lot of room to grow and therefore can be expected to grow more. Students who say got 100%, you can't grow any more than 100%. Those are some students that you might think about extension activities or further activities beyond just a straight curriculum and testing scheme. And there's multiple ways to do this. This is kind of a course formula I'm using, a pretty rough one, just having the distance to 100. There are more complicated ones, but that's the one I use here. And if you want to explore the formula that I use and how to do it in Google Sheets or Excel, I have a formula right here in the formula bar for each one. Now, it might seem unfair to say expect more growth from some students rather than others. But this is a challenge for you. The students who do come in low might be 1, 2, or more grade levels behind in their content. You can expect more growth from them, and you should challenge yourself as a teacher to expect more growth from them. Those are students that need to grow the most to be on track to achieve goals. And they also have a higher potential for growth because they have so much room for growth. So first, I want to make an extra column here between assessment 1 and assessment 2 to see the growth for assessment 1. So I'm going to highlight assessment 2. Once you do that, click on the edge of where you've highlighted and just drag that column over, and you have a new column there. Congratulations. Now I'm going to label this extra column we've created growth 1, growth from assessment 1 since the diagnostic. And I'm going to put a formula in this first one for Pedro Baez. So in F2, I'm going to go up to the formula bar, type equals, and I'm going to take his assessment 1 score, which is E2, click that one, and subtract, so put in a minus sign, which is a hyphen on the computer, the diagnostic, so that's cell C2. Then press enter. So I see he has a positive growth of 1%. As per usual, I can take that formula and click the bottom right corner of that cell and drag it down to get all my students. To find the average growth for the whole class, let's go down to the bottom of that column. Type into cell F22 equals all caps average, open parentheses, and then highlight each of the growth metrics for each student. So that's F2 through F21, close parentheses, and then press enter. And we can see my average growth is 9%. It's positive, which means that overall the students grew on average. And there's, again, a lot of variation between the students, but overall they did grow. And again, we should emphasize at this point that averages can be misleading. Not every student grew by 9% or about 9%. Some grew by a lot more, and some actually deproved. So in the case of, say, David Freeze, you want to check into that student or try and think about what might be happening there and why did they deprove. Let's go into assessment 2. This is the final assessment, and we're going to see, did we meet the quarter goal growth? So I'm going to type in growth 2 next to assessment 2. Pull that out. And I'm going to do a similar formula. So in cell H2, I'm going to type equals. And I'm going to take my assessment 2, which was G2 for Pedro Baez, and I'm going to subtract with the hyphen sign my diagnostic. So I'm getting the growth on the diagnostic again. Press enter. So Pedro Baez grew by 6%, and he actually did meet his quarter goal. He was at 94%, and he's just right on there at the quarter goal mark. And we're going to drag this down, and we can see all the growth rates. The growth rates do seem on average higher now with less negative values. Let's check that out in cell H22. I'm going to go up to the formula bar, type equals, all caps average, open parentheses, and I'm going to highlight all the growth to data points, then close parentheses and press enter. And yes, my growth was even higher at 19%. That was the average percent growth per student here. And you want to celebrate some students. So for example, Jock Pearson, he started out at 15. By the time he got to assessment 2, he grew by 63%. That's a huge growth. He's still not necessarily passing at say 70%, but that's huge growth, and that should be celebrated. And he outpaced his quarter goal. He was at 63% when his goal was at 58%. All right, last but not least, let's go ahead and figure out which students met their growth goal. I'm going to make a new column here, meet/not meet. And I'm going to type into this cell, I2. I'm going to put an equal sign. Type in all caps, if, open parentheses. And then we're going to give Google Sheets a condition. If their assessment 2 score, so I'm going to, for Pedro Baez, highlight G2, is greater than or equal to, so greater or equal, their quarter goal. If that's the case, comma, I want this cell to populate with and put a quotation mark, met, unquote. Then put a comma. If that condition is not satisfied, so that means that their assessment 2 score was lower than their quarter goal, I'm going to put, quote, not, and then unquote, and parentheses. And we can see that Pedro Baez did meet his goal. He equaled 94%, which was his quarter goal. I'm going to drag this down to every student. And then finally, to get the amount who met their goal or did not met their goal, I'm going to click over here. And in K, I'm going to put met. In L, I'm going to put not met. And I'm going to, underneath met for K3, type equals in the formula bar. I'm going to type in countif, C-O-U-N-T-I-F, open parentheses. I'm going to highlight all the met, not mets, comma, and we're going to count the cells that say met. And that way, we're going to count the number of students who met their goal. So count if, those cells, comma, quotation marks, met in all caps, quotation marks again, and parentheses. So it looks like 8 students met their goal. Now we're going to do the same thing under not met, except we're going to count the not met. So they're going to do equals, count if, open parentheses, highlight all those students, comma, and this time I'm going to write the ones you want to count, and then close parentheses. My 20 students, 8 met the goal, 12 did not. And so that means that 40% met the goal and 60% did not. 8 out of 20, 12 out of 20. Again, it's important not just to look at averages and proportions, but also look per student to see where students you might have blind spots to and haven't been growing when you thought they were. Where students actually have deproved, where students that have grown a lot, you might want to celebrate in your classroom. Data is very good for analyzing aggregate trends, and it's also very good when you look at this to see who is really tending to struggle in your classroom and who's really excelling, and to respond to that. So that's video 3. I'm going to go ahead and sign out. Please stay tuned for video 4, which will be a lot of fun, which is non-academic data.